Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Center for National Security Studies at the Pune International Center, I, Kunal Hadavale, extend a very warm welcome to all of you for joining us this evening. On 14 Jan 1761, the plains of Panipat witnessed the most decisive and bloodiest battle in the Indian history, the Third Battle of Panipat. The Marathas clashed with Ahmad Shah Abdali and the Nawabs of North India that would later be remembered as the bloodiest day of the 18th century. Thousands of lives were lost, empires shifted, and the course of Indian history changed forever. Panipat was not just a battlefield, but it was a lesson about strategy, leadership, alliances, and the heavy cost of war. To truly understand the victory of this battle, we need voices who can connect the past with the present. That brings me to introduce our today's distinguished speaker. Colonel Ajay Singh served in the Indian Army for 28 years, gaining to deep experience in the art of warfare and evolving nature of conflicts. His understanding goes beyond the battle. It includes strategy, leadership, and historical insight. Colonel Singh is an author of 8 books and published over 250 articles. He is also a television host and scriptwriter of repute and the recipient of national and international awards in the field of art and literature. In his acclaimed book, The Battles That Shaped India's History, he takes us on a powerful journey from Kurukshetra to Operation Sindoor and draws us right into the very battlefields. Colonel Singh is also a renowned public speaker at the International Seminar and Global Forum, where his deep understanding of the subject is widely respected. His contribution to literature and thought have recognized with several honors, including the Rabindranath Tagore International Prize for Art and Literature, the Bharat Literary Award, and Star Award for Excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite Lieutenant General Vinayak Patankar, Param Vishishta Seva Medal, Uttam Yuddha Seva Medal, Vishishta Seva Medal, Head of the Center for National Security Studies at the Pune International Center, to formally introduce the speaker and set the tune for the talk.
Jai Hind. It's very nice to see a fairly good gathering for a subject which is actually very close to our hearts. And like someone was mentioning outside, that I wish there were a larger representation by the younger generation. But the good part is that everyone who's come here has a soft corner for Maratha history and certainly for the Battle of Panipat. So, Ajay, you are in very good company. Let me speak a few words about Colonel Ajay Singh, my good friend. His brief thumbnail sketch has been told to you by Kunal a few minutes back. But let me tell you a few more things about him, just so that you enjoy his talk a little better. As was mentioned, he is an Armored Corps officer. That makes him a mobile warfare expert. And he served in the army for good 30 years, in which he has done both field and staff appointments, peace and field jobs. He's been instructor in some of our schools of learning. And closer home, he's been an instructor in CME and also in now called Ahilyanagar, the Armored Corps Center and School. So that's so far as the military part is concerned. And then something in his mind triggered, and that was the urge to write. And that's when he decided to say farewell to arms and came out of the army and started writing. He's a thinker, he's a writer, and he is a historian. In fact, a few days back, when we were at a book launch, the latest book written by him, and that's when I suddenly thought that he could be compared to Jasprit Bumrah, right? And I'll tell you why. Like Jasprit plays in all 3 formats. The shortest, the middle one, the one-day internationals, and the real cricket, which is test matches. This fellow is no different. He actually thinks into the future, the long look at our future. So he has a good vision of strategic thinking. He looks at the short term on contemporary issues, like you will probably hear him talk about the Ukraine war, he'll talk about what's happening in the Gaza Strip. And he also looks at the past, which is fast disappearing. So that's the shortest, unfortunately, as far as most of us are concerned. And that actually brings me to another aspect, which actually caught our imagination in the Center for National Security Studies. Now, the Center of National Security Studies looks at all aspects of national security. Last year, we did a sort of a self-audit to see. We've been conducting a lot of programs on national security, and our flagship program has always been the Pune Dialogue on National Security, which is usually a 2-day seminar, and it's a national level seminar where attendance is from all over India, and at times we've had people coming from abroad as well. So we did a self-audit to say, what have we actually delivered at the national level, where people could pay heed to what we discussed and what we recommended and so on. And I found that probably nothing very much. And then we realized that there are at least 24 think tanks who are doing exactly the same thing and producing the similar kind of recommendations and so on. So we said, no, we need to look at ourselves a little differently. And that led us to think about national security at the highest level, and what does it actually mean? One of the things that it told us is national security is making the nation secure by making it strong. If the nation is strong, people don't mess with you. So automatically, a certain modicum of security is assured. So that led us to other things and said, okay. Then came Sindoor. And in Sindoor, the whole nation was going gaga about what the Air Force did, what the Army did, how the Navy was threatening to scuttle the Pakistan maritime forces and so on. But very little attention was paid to what didn't quite go right. And that was the battle of the narrative, where Pakistan did a little better than us. I've always tried to place in the right perspective elation of victory and lessons of defeat. Well, not defeat, but something that robbed us of victory. Let me just put it that way. It's not an altogether defeat per se, but something that if we had done better, the victory would have been even larger. So we then realized, looking back, and you must have heard the famous saying that people who forget the lessons of history are condemned to repeat them, which is actually true. When you start looking at our history, and that's when the first thought came to start this look at our history, which has taught us so many things. And that was how, at the end of each campaign or each major battle, certain lessons were thrown up, which in due course of time we forgot. And we are tending to repeat them all over again. Frankly, victory is fine, and it raises national morale, even from individual down to the entire nation itself. But defeat is a big teacher. It is also something that shows us the path for the future, what we ought not to do, or what we should have done better. So now, as part of building national strength to make India strong and secure, we thought it'll be a good idea to start a series of our military heritage, which would include talks on campaigns, talks on famous battles, like the one we are going to talk about today, Also, 2 years back, or maybe it was 3, when the Navy changed its ensign and put Shivaji Maharaj's emblem there on their flag, we all went very, very happy, but forgot about it. Our naval heritage, how many of us know beyond Kanoji Angre was a great admiral, and Shivaji Maharaj was the first one to start a meaningful navy in our country? Full stop. We know so little about the navy. And we always say that, seaborne traders are the ones who come as traders and then become masters. And yet we haven't paid enough attention to our maritime capabilities, and so on and so forth. So at the Center of National Security Studies, we are contemplating holding a series of talks on famous battles, famous campaigns, and those kind of historic lessons that we ought to bring to our mind again and pass on to the younger generation. That's even more important. Talking of Panipat, and this is the last thing I'm going to say before I invite Ajay, this is something very close to our heart, has always been, and particularly in Pune. I don't know what the population of Pune at that time was in 1761 or thereabouts, but it is generally said that each house, each home in Pune lost a person in the battle. And as you know, it was not only the warriors who went there, but the families had, gone along. So losing a person could well be a non-warrior, a part of the family. So for Pune, it's a very, very close subject, something which is close to our hearts. Panipat actually turned the course of history of our country. And this is not an overstatement. There is enough evidence to suggest. Just imagine, we don't have to be historians ourselves, but just imagine if we had won that battle, where would we be today? Would the British have had such an easy run in our country thereafter? One last thing. One thing which Panipat taught us, and the lesson that we have forgotten, to sort out our local enemies, we invited a foreigner. Not only in the case of Ahmad Shah Abdali in the Battle of Panipat. You're going to hear more about it. I'm not stealing his thunder. But take the British, for instance. How many instances, even in our own Maratha history, where our leaders, generals, took the help of the British to defeat somebody of our own? Well, there may have been enough justification because we didn't have this whole idea of the country as a whole, as India, and, it was always to defeat your immediate enemy, and whatever it took. But it had long-term impact. And that is one of the major lessons, at least I carry, when I think of the Battle of Panipat. I'm not going to stand between you and Ajay, and he's got a very interesting presentation, I'm sure. I've read his very interesting books where he talks about India's battles from Kurukshetra to Sindoor. I think 42 battles, is it? Yes. Right. 42 battles, a very brief account, all encapsulated in one of his latest books. And I am quite aware as to what he's likely to say, having read all that with me. So over to you, Ajay. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Ready? Thank you, sir, for such a lavish introduction, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being out here. It is a true honor to be at this center and speaking on a subject, as sir you brought out, I think, which is very close to the hearts of each one of us, if by nothing else, by virtue of location, where we are, and by virtue of being good Indians. Because, ladies and gentlemen, as General Partner brought out, this was the most significant battle of our history. And even today, the what if question haunts us so much. As you brought out, I am a storyteller, so I will tell stories. And like all good stories, I'm going to tell you where it all began. How did the Battle of Panipat come about? And for that, we have to look back in this tract of land of Panipat. 120 kilometers odd, northwest of Delhi. The last piece of open patch between Delhi and beyond. It is on this land, in the triangle of Tarkeshwar, that's Tarain, Panipat, Sonipat, Kurukshetra, that some of India's most momentous battles were fought. Kurukshetra, a 14-day bloodbath took place here. The Battle of Tarain, one of the battles, I think the first turning point of Indian history, was fought here in Tarkeshwar, very close to Panipat, where Prithviraj Chauhan first defeated Muhammad Ghori, got overconfident, was defeated the next year, and Delhi came under the sway of outsiders. And then you have got the three battles of Panipat that have taken place here. The first one, we all know. Gentlemen, honestly, the first battle, I don't consider it to be so important. It was a battle between two outsiders. A person from Turkmenistan, Babur, and an Afghan, Ibrahim Lodi. The fact that they slaughtered each other, it means nothing to me. But the fact, as a military person, the lessons of this battle and the manner in which the Rajputs were defeated the next year, it means a great deal to all Indians. The other battle, the second battle, and the third, which was the most momentous. Let's have a quick look at each one of them. We all know, gentlemen, Babur, as you all know, was invited to India to get rid of Ibrahim Lodi, the Afghan ruler sitting on the throne of Delhi. And he was invited by none other than the Rajputs themselves. Rana Sanga, who later fought him the very next year. When he came into India, a primitive army, armed, moving on the strength of its cavalry, and 24 heavy mortars. They call it Vazans. Just about 80 odd light cannons. And about 400 to 500 muskets. Using this, they defeated first the army of Ibrahim Lodi, and the next year, the army of the Rajput Confederation under Rana Sanga. This battle, gentlemen, which lasted for just around 300 minutes, got about the Mughal Empire, which lasted 300 years. That means 1 minute of battle got them 1 year of empire. I think that's what you call a very good return on investment. What happened 30 years later? 30 years, this battle got about the Mughal Empire. The next battle at Panipat consolidated it. And what happened then? Exactly 30 years later, almost at the same spot as well. Babur's grandson Akbar had come back, was placed on the throne. The Mughal Empire was a state of flux. And one of the rather ignored heroes of India, Hemchandra, the son of a very humble shopkeeper in Rewari, who had risen to the ranks of the prime minister in the Suri dynasty at Gwalior. He had won 22 battles for his Nizam. And when Humayun died and Babur came on the throne, a young 13-year-old boy, he realized the opportunity to seize Delhi for Indians. He defeated the Mughal, the vanguard, occupied Delhi, sat on the throne for just 14 days before he faced the forces of the Mughals. More than Babur, it was his regent, Behram Khan, who did the fighting. And there, at the cusp of victory, the tide changed. You all know the story, gentlemen. Please play it. This is how the battle unfolded. This is Hemu. Ladies and gentlemen, the flight of this arrow changed Indian history. When it hit Hemu in the eye, who was sitting on top of the biggest and most bejeweled elephant on the battlefield called Hava. It killed him, he fell off his elephant, the troops panicked. A recurring trait in Indian history which came about many years later as well, as you will see in the third battle. And gentlemen, both these battles actually, though significant, they pale into comparison when you see the scale of the third battle. In my own book, I call the third battle of Panipat the Stalingrad of India. Just like in Stalingrad, the Germans moved beyond their reach, moved almost 1,500 kilometers deep into enemy territory, were cut off from their logistics, and then virtually wiped out. Panipat has the same similarities. And to get to how it happened, let's start at how the Maratha Empire arose with Shivaji, one of India's greatest sons, who was one of the few to bring about the cry of nationalism. India is for Indians, not outsiders. He was the man who built up the Maratha Empire by addressing two of the greatest weaknesses of Indian military thinking. Firstly, we always neglected our cavalry. He developed light, fast cavalry which could move half a day's march ahead of their opponent. And the other, he built up the navy, the first ruler to look outwards. And based on the strength of this gentleman, the Maratha Empire rose. It reached its zenith sometime around 1750 or so, largely thanks to Bajirao the First, I think India's greatest warrior. 40 battles undefeated. You know, there is a lot of, I speak very often at the Armored Corps Center and School. I'm a cavalryman myself. And very often, I ask them, hey, who do you think was the greatest maneuver battlefield general ever? And they all say, absurd, Rommel, sir, terrific. Sir, Patton, sir, terrific. Sir, Montgomery, sir, terrific. I said, yeah. And who was the guru of this? They usually pin drop silence. I said the guru of these was Bajirao the First. Montgomery used to keep a copy of his battles in his caravan at night and read it every night to understand how you move fast, where you move, how you concentrate a force, and how you attack the weak point of an enemy. He was one of India's greatest sons. And he, and then his son, Nanasaheb Peshwa, they expanded the Maratha power to a point where it reached Kandahar, Calcutta, the Deccan, and all the way up to Punjab. This, in the mid-50s, as the Maratha Empire was arising, we must understand the fluid political situation of India. The Marathas, of course, they were the undoubted power, but there were other powers also rising. Here, you had the Rajputs in Rajasthan. In Uttar Pradesh, you had the Nawabs of Rohilkhand. You know, these Nawabs were Afghans. That's important. They had come many years, centuries ago, invaded, settled down, and formed their own little kingdoms. Their allegiance laid more towards Afghanistan than towards our own homeland. They were Sujau-ud-Dawla, a Shia Nawab of Awadh, Lucknow, one of the largest rulers at that time. And of course, the Sikhs who remained more or less busy forming their own empire. As the Maratha Empire was expanding to the northwest in Afghanistan, the Durrani Empire was also rising under Ahmad Shah Abdali. And he was the man who created modern-day Afghanistan. He had invaded India repeatedly. In fact, 4 times before this last invasion. He was an understudy of Nadir Shah, another of the persons who caused so much harm to our country. And each time he came, in his last visit in 1757, he slaughtered Delhi, he slaughtered Mathura, and very boastfully said the Yamuna was running red with blood for 4 days. Looted, pillaged, and went back. And when he went back in 1757, he left, he did not stay. He left his regions in North India. Delhi, Jalandhar, Attock, Kandahar, Peshawar, all these places, and returned to Kabul. This was the backdrop to the whole situation. Because when he moved back to the regions, remember 1757, the Marathas realized we have to give an answer to him in case he comes back. So, in 1758, they sent their own army to North India under Raghunath Rao. They defeated the Afghans quite easily. They reached Attock, they reached Kandahar, and they were at the gates of Kabul. It was on the furthest extreme, it was the high noon of the Maratha Empire. And here, the Shah of Iran made a proposal. He said, the Persia at that time, he said, I will attack Afghanistan from the south, you all attack it from the west, let's crush this empire. They did not take it on, they let it happen, they let it pass. The Marathas too withdrew from North India, leaving their regions behind, their small garrisons in their town. And ladies and gentlemen, this was the background to the carnage that was to follow. Because at that time, as the Marathas were rising, Abdali had come and gone, the Marathas had come and gone, but the Marathas had the system of imposing what they call chauth, that is 1/4 of the revenue, and Sardesh Mukhi. That's almost, you could call it 10% cess, which all the rulers around were giving to them. Not a very popular habit, but yeah, you could call it taxation for protection from outsiders. In the north, in Uttar Pradesh, let's call it that, in Uttar Pradesh, where the Nawabs of Rohilkhand were there, all of them with allegiance to the Afghans, they did not like the idea very much. Also, they didn't like the idea of the Maratha Empire expanding so fast. So, Amongst them was Najibuddin, who was the man who was the villain of the piece. He wrote to Ahmad Shah Abdali in Kabul, along with what they call a spiritual guru, saying it's okay, I won't fall down. Saying that the same cry, Islam is in danger, you must come and wage a jihad here. Ladies and gentlemen, it was no jihad. Because the deal was you come to India to save Islam, but you get 50,000 rupees, I beg your pardon, 1 lakh rupees per day for each day of marching, and almost 5 lakh rupees in those days for each day of fighting. So it was a mercenary venture for which he had come in. But yeah, he came in, 1760s he came into India, and quite honestly, he eliminated the Maratha garrisons. What happened? I'm falling down someplace. Please, what is? Hold the mic. Piche, okay. Yeah, okay, I won't fall, don't worry. Sorry. He defeated the Maratha garrisons in North India and came up to Delhi. He came to Delhi, and now, with the summers coming in, he wanted to get back. I'm talking about 1760s, remember, gentlemen? Try to keep that timeline in your mind. But he was convinced to stay by Najib-ud-Dawla and the Nawabs. They said, stay. If you don't, the thorn of the Marathas will fester again, and Islam will be in danger once again. This coercion, motivation, plus the sweetener of a lakh of rupees every day, induced him to stay in North India. And here, he stayed in the area, I'm just to make it clear to you, in the area of Meerut, Saharanpur. In a nutshell, east of the Yamuna River, east of Delhi. That's important. And he camped out there while he waited for the summers to subside. I am talking about the period now around early 1760. And when the Marathas heard that Abdali is there, he's sitting in, he's not gone back. They had a war council. It was at Satara, right? And the leaders who had fought Abdali, Holkar, the Scindias, the Gaikwads, they all suggested, they all discussed for about 7 days, what on earth do we do with him? Most of them suggested, ignore him, he will go away. He can't stay longer. Amongst the chiefs, there was a lot of dissension. And Sadashiv Bhau, who was also the brother to the Peshwa, he said, no, if we allow him to go away, he will come back again. We have to destroy him before and teach him a lesson so that he never repeats it again. Whether this was good, bad, or indifferent, I think in the hindsight, it was a wrong decision, but that was the decision that was taken. So eventually it was decided that Sadashiv Bhau will take an army of almost 30,000 soldiers and go and contest Abdali in North India. Sadashiv Bhau, his star was on the ascendant. He had just come back after having defeated the Nizam of Hyderabad in the Battle of Udgir. And like this, nothing. And I mean, his word was going at that point in time. But the catch was, though he was to have taken the army to North India, he had bid for 80 lakhs of finances. He was given just 20 lakhs. He was given limited gunpowder, limited ammunition, and as far as food and foraging goes, he was told a Maratha army lives off the land. A horrendous policy, because it means wherever the Marathas went and they began plundering or foraging, they earned enmity rather than strength. He was known to be a strict, no-nonsense kind of a guy. And though he was good, he had never seen North India. And from what one reads, he was impetuous and short-tempered and could not hold those chiefs together. A major fault in a campaign like this. More so since the entire thing depended on getting allies. So when the Marathas moved ahead, they looked for allies. All the Nawabs of North India threw their lot with Ahmad Shah Abdali. They had made it a jihad. Even Suja ud Dawla, the very, very influential Nawab of Lucknow, who owed a lot to the Marathas had put him on the throne. He was a Shia. There were a lot of Shias to the rift. He himself was convinced to join jihad, as they said. On the other hand, the Rajputs, Madho Singh of Jaipur, Vijay Singh of Jodhpur, not only did they refuse to join the Marathas, they actually passed information to Abdali about the Marathas. They wanted to weaken the Marathas so that they don't have to pay chauth in future after that. The one person who sided with them was Surajmal Jat, the Jat chief of Bharatpur, Gwalior. He, unfortunately, was antagonized by Sadashiv Bhau. Because when the Marathas reached Goa, he advised him, he said, listen, why do you want to go with a huge army and fight those guys out there? You are Marathas, fight your traditional guerrilla warfare. Hit, run, keep all your heavy equipment at forts, he will go back on their own. And he turned around and said, I don't take advice from shepherds and goat herds. And unfortunately, antagonized him. They lost a very vital ally in the crucial days. So the Maratha allies were not there. The chieftains were not really pulling on too well together. But notwithstanding that, they moved from the Deccan and moved northwards towards Delhi. In that army, which gradually swelled as it went along, were also around 20 to 25,000. The exact figure we don't know. Women, children, and camp followers. And that was the greatest tragedy of Panipat. They went up, saw the holy place on the way, crossed the Chambal, and on the 21st of July, the Marathas reached Delhi. Remember, at that time, Delhi was held by the Mughal, Shah Alam Shah Alam II, who was the Mughal ruler of Delhi. Just in name, they had no power. Like they say, the reign of Shah Alam is from Delhi to Palam. They had no power, but he was the titular head. And honestly, even the Marathas wanted to keep him as the head. 250 years the dynasty has been there. It's almost like, it's a status quo that is continuing. They captured Delhi. They could not find much. There was not much loot. They stripped the silver from the palaces, sold it, got food, forage, and things like this. And they stayed on in Delhi for a while. In this time, the two enemy armies had not made contact. Ahmad Shah Abdali was still east of the Yamuna in the area of Meerut, Saharanpur. They had not even seen each other. I mean, of course, they would have been the spies all coming out there, but no contact so far. Delhi was a huge victory for the Marathas. And then they waited for Dasera, and then they moved to capture Kunjpura. Gentlemen, this was the high point of the campaign. Kunjpura was a small fort on the west bank of the Yamuna Nadi, of the river. This was Abdali's staging point. It was stocked with rations, food, water, no ammunition, money, and things like this. The Marathas attacked it with their cannons, smashed the doors, and as the Afghans were fleeing inside it, the cavalry charged, entered the gates, went inside it, slaughtered the Afghans out there, and took over the fort. In fact, so fast they had moved that the Afghans inside came out with grass in their mouths. Any idea why they would do that? Any idea? Where's my friend Kunal? Is he here? I want one of the younger people to answer me this question. They came with grass in their mouth to say, we are holy cows. We are cows. Don't kill us because you consider us holy. And the Marathas captured almost 4,000 of them. This was on the bank of the Yamuna River, on the west bank. On the east bank, Ahmad Shah Abdali could see the slaughter taking place and see his prize being captured by the Marathas. They could do nothing because the river was in flood. They said it was almost 2 kilometers wide at that time and heavy floods going on out there. But he saw it, and this was the high point of the Maratha campaign around the 17th of October, 1760. Ladies and gentlemen, try to visualize this. Put that map in your head. You have got Delhi, you have captured Kunspura, you have the fast-flowing Yamuna between you, your enemy is on the east. As a military man, you only say one thing: I've got to just sit here at the crossing place of Yamuna, prevent Abdali from getting back to Afghanistan, and I have done what I have to do. But here, they made what was a blunder, a complete blunder. I don't need mince words on that, because to my military mind, it doesn't strike me why he did it. The Marathas decided to go to Kurukshetra. There is no military logic to it. Even the writings, they say the ladies wanted to see the site of Kurukshetra where the Gita was written. But Baba, it's like you send the ladies on an Ava picnic. You don't take the whole army with you. But the whole army went towards Kurukshetra. One school of thought says he wanted to meet the Sikhs and form an alliance with them. Logical. But then you don't take the army. You send envoys and emissaries. But they moved from Delhi towards Panipat. And as they moved, Ahmad Shah Abdali militarily performed what can be called the master stroke of that war. He crossed the flooded Yamuna Nadi over a period of 3 days. When he came, he couldn't cross it. He apparently called all the fishermen out there, began slaughtering them, telling him, you all will know the crossing places, find out. They told him which of the places could be crossed. Over 1,000 men were swept away. But they crossed the Yamuna, reached behind them, and now they came up behind the Marathas. They were in the area of Samalkha, between Delhi and Panipat. Now the tables were turned. It was the Marathas who were cut off. And when they were cut off here, gentlemen, even then, at that point of time, there was no cause for concern. Because once they realized the cut off, they immediately built up a fortified position around the town of Panipat. They dug a huge ditch. And they braced themselves for a siege. They were actually waiting for Ahmad Shah Abdali to attack. Because there were wonderful cannons they had got. They were a strong, well-trained army. They were waiting for them to come. Unfortunately, Abdali did not attack. He stood behind them and slowly cut off all their routes of supplies coming into the Maratha camp. And remember, October. November came out, and there was a chill in the air. Winter was setting in. They were not prepared for winter, a North Indian winter. And slowly, the supplies started running out. Skirmishes took place almost on a daily basis. And in most of the skirmishes, the Marathas emerged victorious. They usually got the better hand of them. And it was Abdali who was actually, even though he was surrounding them, he was finding himself in a weaker spot. But then, 3 things happened in December which just changed the equation. You know, on the 7th of December, the Marathas had sent a party out. It was attacked by the Afghans. It was led by Mahendale, Balwant Rai Mahendale. There was a road named after him near Shaniwar Bagh. He was one of the greatest chieftains. And in that skirmish, they defeated the Arabs, the Afghans, soundly. But as they were doing it, just before they were breaking side, some Afghans jumped on him, they unhorsed him and they cut his throat. Some of them tried to rip off the throat and take the head away. It was a plate trophy in those days. And the entire site was being watched by the Marathas from the camp. They got the body back. They killed the Afghans, but the shock of seeing her husband decapitated like this, his wife, when the funeral pyre took place, she handed her son to Sadashiv Bhau and she jumped in the funeral pyre. And that suddenly changed the morale tremendously. A second thing happened. Because they were running short of supplies, they had got Bundale, who was one of their chieftains, who was operating around the area of Uttar Pradesh, whose job was to get supplies and make sure it reaches the Maratha camp. Now, Bundale was ambushed, killed, and his head sent to the camp as a trophy. Now, the supplies coming in also dissipated. And in the last horrible quirk of fate, a band of Marathas coming in from the Deccan with money and supplies for the army wandered into the Afghan camp at night. They were captured and the much needed money and supplies were taken away from them. With these actions around mid-December, the picture changed. In the camp, supplies ran out, cholera began, and cholera epidemic began. Horses started dying. And one thing that you must remember, Sadashiv Bhau's wife, Parvati, one thing, history doesn't mention her role so much. She played a great role in that camp to ensure, trained doctor as well, making sure it is clean, trying to make sure things are going on as best as possible. Supplies were running short, and there's a story which I heard about, which I want to share with you because it's a huge indicator. Every night, Ahmad Shah Abdali used to be riding around the Maratha camp. Remember, the camp was about 5 kilometers long and about 3-4 kilometers deep, but he was riding around it. And then he turned around to one of his Indian local chiefs and said, listen, you say there's a shortage of food, firewood, and everything in the Maratha camp. But if you take a look at it, there are about maybe 500 fires burning out there. If they were running short of wood, why are they spending firewood by burning so many fires? So he said, sir, they have a strict caste system out there. So that people from one caste will not eat food cooked by somebody from another caste. So that communal kitchens were not there. And he turned around and said, is that the case? Then we have won this war. Gentlemen, that divisions have cost us dear. And as January came in, as the supplies ran out, slowly things began worse. Makar Sankranti fell on the 10th of January that year. And the Marathas gathered for a war council. And they said, if we are going to die, let's fight and die. Let's not just remain besieged like this. Negotiations were going on between them. Peace talks were going on between them. They were decided, Abdali said, the border will be the Satluj River. Sadashiv Bhau said, no, the border will be the Indus River. So the talks didn't come to much. But now the Marathas were in the back foot, and they said, we have to break out of this. So, how will you break it up? They said, we'll slam the Afghan lines with artillery fire, form a hollow square. That is a square with 3 sides, with the women and children between, and just break out towards the Yamuna River. Keep the Yamuna on the flank, and then move to Delhi, and from there move back to Gwalior and the Deccan. A good plan on paper, but gentlemen, they were actually quite weakened by that. But even then, when they got ready, they distribute pan at night, gave a last meal to everybody, and prepared the next morning for the bloodiest day of Indian history. 14th January, 1761. And in this, the Marathas lined up in their order of battle. Gentlemen, try to visualize this. On the left flank was Ibrahim Gardi. He was a Muslim. He was a mercenary who was an artillery expert trained by the French, who, even though the other chieftains didn't like him, he was one of the guys who fought most valiantly. In the center was Sadashiv Bhau himself, along with the Peshwa's son, Vishwas, who was the head of the army. And on the left, on the right flank, were the Holkars and the Scindias. Please try to visualize a battle array because it's extremely important. And when they attacked, first the attack came in from the left with Ibrahim Gardi. It was a classical, disciplined, European kind of attack, in which his battalions moved, one forward, other giving counting fire, moving forward, while the artillery kept on firing from behind. They made tremendous headway. The battle began about 9 o'clock in the morning, and they almost broke the ranks of the Mughal flank opposite them. And that is when the Marathas made the first mistake of the war. The plan was, when he broke into the crust of the defenses, the cavalry would charge, go behind, expand it, and they would break out. The Maratha cavalry charged prematurely. They went ahead. Now they came between Ibrahim Gardi's troops and the Afghans. The attack petered out. There was confusion, and they could not exploit this breach. But in spite of that, they still made great headway. In the center, gentlemen, here, you can see this is where Ibrahim Gardi's attack took place. In the center was where Sadashiv Bhau was leading his attack. They came, they attacked with what he called the Hazurat, the household cavalry, his personal cavalry of about 12,000, the cream of the Maratha cavalry. They smashed through the ranks, made a breach, and they were all set to break. At around 12, between 12 and 1, was the time the battle hung in balance. And honestly, we would have won even then. We were all set to break out because the ranks, the Afghans started panicking and running away. And now, Ahmad Shah Abdali, he did not fight. He was not in the biggest elephant in the front. He was sitting on a hillock behind, watching the whole thing. He had with him a pair of French-made binoculars. He had his favorite wives with him, and he had a platoon of messengers. When he saw the ranks breaking, he sent his military police, caught all those were running, cut the heads of a few of them, and sent them back. Took his reserve and sent them back here to fill the breaches that had been made. By around 1:30, the breaches were completed. The Marathas were tiring, and fresh soldiers had come. Please put it plate. Plate. Gentlemen, this was a turning point. When the reinforcements came, and then the line was filled up once again. Now, I'm talking about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Something which has not been explained even today took place. The right flank of the Marathas, where the Holkars and the Scindias were holding, they were supposed to have attacked as well. For some reason, not explained fully even to this date, the Holkars and the Scindias did not attack. They remained where they were. Some say the Holkars had gone to a pact with Ahmad Shah Abdali that they would be spared. I sometimes look at it and say maybe it was a tactical military decision which saved almost 15,000 troops. I really do not have an explanation for that. But the thing is, because they did not attack and instead withdrew behind, a huge gap came up here in the flanks. And from this, the Afghans circled, surrounded them, and now you find the Marathas were tight, were hemmed in a knot between the Afghan front and the flanks. You know, what you are seeing out here was one of the most lethal weapons of that war. It's called Zamburak. They were light cannons mounted on camels. So the camels began wheeling around the Marathas, firing, running away. And one of the shots from this Zamburak hit Vishwas Rao, the Peshwa's son and the titular head of the army. It killed him on the spot. And when Satashu Bhau saw his nephew fall from the elephant, he himself left and went to look after his nephew. The Marathas saw their leaders had disappeared and panic took over. That's why I said, remember the second Battle of Panipat? Indians traditionally do that. When the leader is gone, they kind of break. And now a general rout began. As it is, the right flank was not moving. Sadashiv Bhau had realized that, like he was told, leave. He said, how can I go back and face the Peshwa when I've been unable to look after his son? He led a last charge. And around 3 o'clock, he himself This massacre continued for hours. Almost 25 to 30,000 soldiers were killed. Worse, the women and children in the camp, the Afghans reached it. They were abducted. The menfolk were killed. The non-combatants were killed. Many of them tried to slip away and get away into the hills. Unfortunately, it was a full moon night that day. So they were pursued, and what happened was unimaginable. That night, gentlemen, the fortunes of a country changed completely. But even this tragedy could have been avoided. Because when all this was going on, here in Pune, Nana Sahib Peshwa, who was sitting in Pune for all these months, receiving news about his army, had decided finally in November, I am going to take an army and go and relieve Maratha army in Panipat. He began his march to the north with an army of about 20,000. Had he reached in time, can you imagine? The Afghans would have been caught in two pincers. They would have been crushed. But then, in mid-December, he decided to halt at Python and get married. He got married, stayed on till the 31st of December, and then continued again. He crossed the Narmada, 15 December, January, the story is over. And around the end of January, as he was crossing the Chambal, he got a messenger with the news, 2 pearls have been dissolved, 27 gold mohurs have been lost, and the silver and copper is unimaginable. The 2 pearls, Sadashiv Bhau and his son, 27 chiefs, and the men who died on the battlefield. Ladies and gentlemen, he came back. It was too late. He got a letter from Ahmad Shah Abdali stating, expressing regret for the loss of life. It is true. I will show that letter. And also proposing a boundary between the two empires on the lines of the Satluj River. But by then, it was already way too late. He came back. He spent the rest of his short life on the Parvati Hill. Yeah, you can see very close to where we are, where he unfortunately passed away in June. He was one of the great Peshwas, but this was a mistake. History. And what happened after that? Abdali went back. He died of cancer in 1772, and I hate to say it, but I'm quite happy at that horrible death he had. Peshwa himself died of a broken heart. Now the Maratha power, gentlemen, in spite of this tremendous defeat, it rose again. And it rose in the hands of the people who got away from Panipat. Holkars, Scindia, and Nana Fadnis. Fadnis was there in the camp, and he became one of the Peshwas after that, who actually got Maratha power back. They went back to North India. They destroyed the Afghan, the Rohillas, Afghans of North India. They went to Najibabad. He was dead, unfortunately, wiped out his kingdom, desecrated his grave, and established the power once again. But that weakness, that loss, you could not be condoned. They had lost so much, and it created the vacuum for the British to come into India and finally establish 190 years of horrible British rule. Sir, I remember you said, now, what if? It is a question so often historians ask. What if? What if the Marathas allied with the Shah of Iran and finished that bloody serpent at that point? What if the Rajputs had not betrayed him? What if Shuja-ud-Dawla allied with them? What if the right flank had not withdrawn? I really don't know. What if the Peshwa had gone a month earlier? And most importantly, what if the Marathas had won? Ladies and gentlemen, it's a question I cannot answer. But I do know, had we won, the shape of our country would have changed irrevocably for the better. And the reason I want to highlight it is, as you said, even in the beginning, sir, those who do not remember the lessons of history are condemned to relive them. I do hope I brought alive some of the lessons of this momentous battle. And I do hope you have enjoyed it, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a true pleasure. Put in the volume.
Thank you, Colonel Ajay Singh, for this such comprehensive detailed talk. Now we are moving to the Q&A session, and I request General Patankar to moderate the Q&A session. I also request the audience to please hand over the question slips to the coordinators. Thank you.
While we are waiting for the question slips to arrive, if anyone wants to start the proceedings by asking the first question without waiting for the slip to arrive? Anyone? I'm sorry, I can't see you. Yeah, please, please. The mic is coming to you. Kindly use that, yeah.
Despite his failings, wouldn't Raghunath Rao been a better commander than Sadashiv Rao?
Sir, very, very, very correct, sir. Raghunath Rao had led the campaign in the year earlier. He had experience of North India. He had experience of fighting the Afghans. Now, in that council of war, which I talked about, when he was the one who advocated, he said, don't go and fight him now. I have seen their strengths. Don't fight him. Stay behind. He advocated the right thing. And he was taunted by, unfortunately, by no less Sadashiv Bhau. The very mention of the Afghans seemed to fill you with fear. So he retorted. He said, jackals speak very loudly till they see the lion. Perhaps you are right. He had experience of that battle. He might have fought them better because he would have advocated the guerrilla form of war, of which the Marathas were masters. That would have been the better strategy, sir. Again, one of the what-ifs of history. Sir. Sir.
Before even the Council of War, there was a tiff because in 1960, Raghunath Rao was already in North India.
Correct.
And he was actually given a task to remove Abdali's army at that time. And he had asked for some resources.
Correct.
Money,
Correct.
troops, etc.
Correct.
And he said, I will do the task. But he was denied that and he was told to live off the land and manage that.
I'll amplify. Absolutely right.
So that is one of the reasons why Raghunath Rao withdrew from this campaign.
Absolutely right. Because when he went on that campaign, he came back with 80 lakhs in debt. So he was taunted. He said, you went up there, you got defeated, he came back and you got 80 lakhs in debt. Who are you to talk about it? That was one of the reasons why he was put down. But some of his arguments were very sound ones. Thank you for the insight.
Absolutely right. That's right. That's correct.
Yes, sir.
I'm Umranikar. You see, we have heard this narrative for such a long time. Can we not build another narrative? How was it history-changing event? In 59, Raghunath Rao had reached up to Lahore. Taimur, Abdali's son, he had to run away from there. In 71, we had a war. In 61, we had the third Battle of Panipat. In 1770, we were again in Delhi.
Correct.
So it was a battle lost.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
It was only a battle lost. Why do we go by this narrative that, it was something
superb, sir.
which changed the history? It didn't change the history at all.
Sir, may I get your point. Super point. Terrific, sir.
Just one more thing. About Nana Sahib Peshwa getting married before going to North. This was a practice of many Peshwas. Peshwas were always short of funds. They would get married, and they would get dowry and spend it on the army. So please don't look at it, as something incorrect. No, I was feeling very sad when you said this thing. I think you should delete this.
I do not think we should delete facts.
Yeah. No, it's not a fact, but the interpretation, you have to give the interpretation also then.
The military interpretation that he got delayed in the campaign. But coming on to your point, sir, of how it changed history, not so much in the battle between the Marathas and the Afghans, but in the campaigns that followed with the British. 14th January this took place. 15th of January, the British won a victory in Awadh. 16th of January, they won a victory against the French in Pondicherry. These 3 days conspired to make the path easier for the British to establish an empire in India. That's why I say it was a history-changing moment. Thank you, sir. Please.
Okay. I can see the amount of interest it has generated. Yep. Dr. Kaushal, your question is, should we be comparing Battle of Panipat with the Battle of Stalingrad? Yeah.
Sir, thank you. I'm speaking purely from the military point of view, in which the conduct, in fact, one of the things I bring out is, both battles bring out one very vital aspect. That is, you have extended your operational and logistic reach. This is the commonality. The other commonality was in the manner in which the RVs were cut off, weakened, and then defeated. That is why I make the comparison.
Okay, Brigadier Bhatt. Okay, I was just going to say that I think you've already asked that. Niket Gavde wants to know, should India become dominant and geopolitical aggressor to acquire Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka and Maldives? India cannot live under continuous threat from its unstable geopolitical neighbors. Chinese ambition to acquire Indian territory. Before I request Ajay to answer that, just one thing. During his presentation, he also made a passing mention maybe, he didn't dwell on it, reaching beyond your capability. Sometimes people get over-ambitious and reach beyond their capability and then get cut off. In one case, it was due to logistics. In the other case, it was simply because they just didn't have enough resources. But I'll leave that to Colonel Ajay too.
Sir, you've answered the question, sir, but if I may answer the question with another question. If India is to take over Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc., besides the chest thumping, what tangible advantage will it give us? Ladies and gentlemen, I would feel a better course of action would be consolidate what we have, become so strong economically, politically, militarily, in every respect that a security is then assured. Do not extend the reach, sir, as you brought out.
Yes, just might I'd like to add something which I learned pretty early in life. Talking of various things, when I was pretty young in service and age, and, we've always looked at Pakistan as a thorn in our side, and why do we keep, making different moves against Pakistan and nothing decisive? So I once asked my commanding officer, who I thought was an extremely knowledgeable man, and I said, sir, why don't we finish off Pakistan? He was a very, very wise man. He thought for a moment and he said, in the void that will be created, who will fill it? Would we be able to fill that void? If not, my guess is Iran will fill it. Now at least you have an enemy you know. Tomorrow you'll have an enemy you don't know. So there are a number of things that go into consideration of these kind of decisions, of reaching out. Of course, there is a lot of wisdom in preemptive strikes and making sure that your borders are, the people across your borders are weak, so they can never think of attacking you. But at the same time, you have to see whether it's a good thought, but do we have the capability? I think the question that Brigadier Gokhale asked has already been covered. Commodore Deshmukh, Chhatrapati always directed to never trouble local population. When did this decision change? I think it's a good question.
True. That's true, sir. They were told not to trouble the local population, but unfortunately, there had been so many instances when they were short of food, fodder, foraging, they had to take whatever was available to them. And in fact, when they reached Delhi, when they were so short of food and fodder, that a lot of troops actually indulged in looting, which earned them a lot of ill repute while they were in Delhi itself. So while the instruction had been passed, an army as large as this, implementing it in letter and spirit would have been very difficult, as times did show, sir. That would have taken place, sir. An army as large as that, moving so much, all these incidences would have taken place.
Naren Apte wants to know, did the Afghans take prisoners and did they take them back to Afghanistan? I want to add one more to it. We know that a number of prisoners were taken to Balochistan, and there continues to be a large number of people whose origination was Maharashtra. They continue to stay there and live there. But Balochistan wasn't a part of the Afghan empire, was it?
So at that time, the Afghan empire had expanded beyond modern-day Afghanistan itself. It had come almost to Peshawar, Attock, all these places. Okay. So at that time, it would have been part of the empire, sir.
Right. Raja Kulkarni, sorry?
Yes, so the very, very tragic part of this was, yes, a very large number of prisoners were taken, especially women and children. And that is why, like you brought out, so the influence is there in Balochistan. It could be maybe people who got away, established a settlement out there. Right. A lot of people who have also got away from there went to the hills of Uttarakhand. That's why you have so many Maharashtrian names in the Kumaon hills, the Joshis, the Pants, the Bhatts. So, such a large amount of women and children, many of them dissipated, but most of them suffered horrible fates.
Yes. As a matter of fact, this is one thing which sometimes is lost sight of, that these people who escaped towards the hills and what is now known as the Kumaon and Garhwal and those areas, Uttarakhand, they didn't come back because they found that they had no face to show. It was a sense of shame that drove them there, and not as a mere escape. It was the sense of shame. So you could see that there was a very, very strong character element in their decision. Pajak Kulkarni, your question is, if Scindias did attack, or didn't attack anyway, if not, why do we see names like Jankoji and Mankoji in KIA list?
Okay, very good. See, remember, gentlemen, when the Scindia army of almost 12, the Scindia Holkar, almost 12,000 on the right flank did not attack. But remember, many of those who were killed were not killed on the battle itself. There were a lot of deaths that took place before the battle. There was skirmishing going on for 3 months prior to that. And also, there would be people, they were chieftains. They would be spread out across the front. So it wouldn't be that the entire clan as such did not participate. But the bulk of the army, under the head, on the right flank, maybe fortunate or unfortunate, did not participate in the assault. Sorry? No, there would be elements of it, sir, not the full thing. You're talking about the revival? Very good. The subject I was speaking on was the impact of the third Battle of Panipat and the revival. So what I want to bring, please listen to me, what I want to bring out was the fact that the survivors of Panipat did contribute tremendously to the revival of the empire. That's what I want to bring out.
That question is justified in the sense that most of us here are sort of closely connected with that part of history, and we all know how a demoralized nation, if I might use that word, was brought up from ground upwards by Madhurav. There's no question. Yeah. You see, that part of the revival is almost taken as the next chapter kind of a thing. That's probably why it was left unsaid, but your point is valid. Prabodh Joshi has asked a question. Why were ladies and children taken? Not the way Marathas fought battles.
This is a marvelous question, sir. This is a really marvelous question. Now, remember what I told you about Maratha cavalry under Bajirao first? And Shivaji, their use of cavalry was exemplary. They had got 3 horses between every 2 trooper. Each one from the Senapati to the Savar had with him a pouch containing 2 half-baked chapatis, 1 lump of gourd, little bit of chana, a mirchi, and a packet of salt. That are the rations for everybody, right? And 2 blankets to sleep at night and all that. Moving so light and fast, they could appear unexpectedly. And like I said, they were half a day's march of any opponent, especially the Mughals, who moved with their baggage trains and women and children behind with them. So, what were 22,000 women and children doing in Panipat and part of the Maratha army? The story behind this is interesting and tragic. As you know, when Bajirao I, when he went in his campaigns to Bundel, he came back with Mastani to the Deccan, back to the Deccan. You know the furore that took place in the Maratha court. When he unfortunately passed away in 1740, thereafter, the Queen Mother issued an edict saying that our brave, strong, virile Maratha warriors, when they leave our lands, they can be seduced by the woman, the evil woman of these lands. So henceforth, the Maratha armies are permitted to take their families with them on a campaign. That decision came back to haunt them much later. One aspect. The other aspect was the Marathas had just fought a 1-year-long campaign against the Nizam of Hyderabad, which they won at Udgir just in the month of February before moving out. So perhaps the feeling at that side was they've been away from their families, from homes for so long, let them take it along. And the third reason which is given was the women and children wanted to accompany the army on a pilgrimage to see the holy places. Whatever be the underlying cause, the result was disaster.
Jaitirth has drawn an interesting comparison between the Battle of Panipat and Mahabharata. His question is, do we see a vacuum of a mentor like Sri Krishna? Sadashiva Bhau gave up when Vishwas Rao died, like Arjun and Abhimanyu episode.
Who has asked this question? It's a marvelous question. Thank you very much. Excellent question. Yes. I would say not just a mentor. I would say perhaps there was a lack of guidance. Remember, they were cut off from there. Maybe elders watching from a distance. Maybe their own chieftains giving sound advice. They listened. It could have changed it. Superb observation. Thank you.
In fact, I might add one more to the what if.
Sir.
what if Nana Fadnavis had occurred a decade earlier? He would have been the mentor.
Diplomatic skills.
Yeah, I mean, he was, if you read about him, you'll realize what a mentor he was and what kind of wise counsel he gave the Peshwas from time to time. The next question is from, I'm sorry, Ashar. What Ashar are you? Anyway, the question is, what is one leadership lesson from this battle that young managers should remember? That's a very good question.
Superb. Who asked that question? Thank you for a marvelous question. I'll answer it in one word, repeated 3 times. The lesson is logistics, logistics, logistics.
Absolutely true. You know, sometimes when we get carried away with the accounts of battles, we forget that other famous sentence or the adage that says the army marches on its stomach. Logistics is what gives sustainability to the ability to fight long wars, long campaigns. Vikrant Patwardhan has asked a question. Is there a documented view that the British had on the Battle of Panipat? That's the first one. And the second question, British respect of Tipu Sultan, Ranjit Singh and Mahatji Shinde is well known. Did the British have any similar or more disdainful view of the Chhatrapati and Peshwai, and why?
Very, very, very good. In fact, most of the documented history of what happened in the Battle of Mahabharat comes from a British eyewitness who happened to be there. And one thing you will realize is the British were very anti-Maratha. For the simple reason, they viewed them as a direct obstacle to their own plans. They were very thrilled when they lost at Panipat. And talking about respect, like I said, they respected them militarily. Bajirao I, Montgomery used to carry these campaigns with him and study them as a military leader. Shivaji was known to be a great military leader, even acknowledged by the British. But they did not, in fact, they didn't accord respect to any of the Indian leaders, neither Tipu Sultan nor anybody else. But they learned from their pluses. They also identified their weaknesses and they exploited it very well. Please, I can see somebody there asking a question.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, please. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's a very nice question. You know, it would be in that Council of War, had they decided, they said, okay, forget it, why go all the way back out there? Ignore him, he'll go back away. If that battle had not been fought, what would have happened was, I may be wrong, it's conjecture. Abdali would have gone back to Afghanistan because there was already a revolt going on in Kabul. His brother was taking over the throne, right? The Marathas would have then come to North India and got after the Nizams, Najibuddaulah Suja, for inviting Abdullah. They would have crushed them and established Maratha power in the Deccan. This battle, had it not taken place, there would have been a different turn to history. It's a superb question you've asked me. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to add one more sentence before I close this question-answer session, and that is, if that battle hadn't taken place, Colonel Ajay wouldn't be talking to us this evening. On that note, I think we'll close this session of question and answers. And you've been a wonderful audience. Their participation is absolutely exemplary. And I'm sure all of us have enjoyed every word of what Colonel Ajay had to tell us. And the way he presented this very, very interesting battle in the most authentic fashion. I invite you to please rise to give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. It's such a pleasure. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Colonel Singh, for answering the questions thoughtfully, and thank you, General Patankar, for moderating the Q&A session skillfully. Now, I request General Patankar to felicitate our guest, Colonel Singh.
But I will thank you. I would also like to give something small. This is a copy of my book, India's Battlefield from Kurukshetra to Balakot, which devotes a very large chunk to Maratha history and this battle. I do hope you do me the honor of accepting it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Now, I request Mr. Yash Gupte to deliver the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As we conclude today's enlightening discourse on the third Battle of Panipat, it is my privilege to extend a heartfelt vote of thanks on behalf of the Pune International Center and the Center for National Security Studies. We are deeply grateful to Colonel Ajay Singh, International Award-winning author and military historian, for his captivating talk and presentation. His insights brought to life one of the most decisive battles in the Indian history, offering us a richer understanding of its strategic, political, and historical significance. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Lieutenant General Vinayak Patankar, Param Vishishta Seva Medal, Uttam Yuddha Seva Medal, Vishishta Seva Medal, head of the Center for National Security Studies at the PIC, for his thoughtful opening remarks and for expertly moderating the question and answer session, which greatly enriched the discussion. Our gratitude also goes to Mr. Dinanath Kholkar, Director at the Pune International Center, and Mr. Rishikesh Dhande, Deputy Director, for their leadership and support in making this event possible. A special word of appreciation to Mr. Kunal Hadavle for skillfully emceeing the session and ensuring a smooth and engaging flow of proceedings. I would also like to extend my sincere thanks to all our attendees, my colleagues, and the entire team working behind the scenes for their invaluable support and contributions, which were integral to the success of this event. Before you leave, I would like to draw your attention towards our upcoming event. We will be hosting a book discussion on Through a Diplomat's Lens, Capturing Momentous Times, authored by Ambassador Sudhir Devre, offering unique sights into diplomacy and international affairs. The event will be held on Wednesday, 11 February, from 5 to 7 p.m. in the evening. For further details, I kindly request you to check PIC's website. Thank you once again. We look forward to a continued engagement and to welcoming you to future programs at the Pune International Center. Jai Hind.